Chapter 7, Episode 5. Mid-March 1148. On that day, Thelma attended the regular meeting of the Temple Cardinals of the Guardian Temple at the Imperial Court, receiving the benefits of the religious reforms of the Holy Land promoted by Elizabeth, who also served as High Priestess of the Holy Land, and Solomon, who was appointed local head of the Holy Land. The ceremonies and meetings of the Holy Land that Thelma was to hold were reduced to a minimum, and it was practical. It was limited only to the tangible things. Thelma makes a round trip to the Holy Kingdom once a week, but Elizabeth has a temporary temple headquarters in the imperial capital. Then we will meet regularly. Thelma receives the materials prepared by the priest. Previously, patron deities were not allowed to attend important temple meetings and voice their opinions, but thanks to Elizabeth's arrangement, Thelma also attended. This is a project ordered by the patron deity, and here is a summary of the locations of spells and divine art networks around the world. Thank you. At first, Thelma, who was treated as an incomprehensible non-human, began to open up and lend his ear when the priests realized that they could talk about people if they gave detailed opinions. I heard that Solomon, who flies around in different places to build a guardian temple and a divine art base as a substitute, and Juliana were very convinced. That's the area where the temple barrier won't reach. I see. This place is completely empty. Thelma also had a serious expression on her face. This kind of place becomes a pool of evil spirits. According to this map, the northwestern part of the continent, inland. Elizabeth caught her gaze and pointed to the map with a folding fan. A priest explained the situation. Yes. I understand it, but I can't do anything about it. It is a sacred land that has usurped the true power of nations across the continent by grasping the secrets of the divine arts. But there are lands in the polar regions where the Kingdom of Enland is located that does not accept the rule of the temple, the sovereign land, and anti-temple forces exist. Then it is not under the protection of the temple barrier. Does it have its own defense? Even so, you can't use divine arts. You can only use physical defense. Is that so? Didn't you know that? Sorry, I have no idea about world affairs. Thelma remembered that the Kingdom of Enland existed on the map, but he didn't know that it was a non-theistic nation. It's okay if there are anti-temple forces, but it's pretty healthy. As long as you don't think about evil spirits, it's fine, Thelma thinks. If you think about it, this situation where a single religion indirectly rules the world is abnormal, and Thelma doesn't want to expand the area under the temple's control to extend the line of defense against evil spirits. Thelma, who doesn't know much about world affairs, shyly asks Solomon. You said that people in this land can't use divine arts. Goodbye. This country has mighty military power, but because it can't open the veins of the gods, there isn't even a single user of divine arts. Is that so? One more question. You said that you can drive away evil spirits, but you can't extinguish them, right? Yes. Without a doubt, no matter what kind of divine arts you use, evil spirits will never go away. Solomon nods. The divine temple arts and all the divine arts in this world basically drive away evil spirits and keep them from approaching, but they cannot extinguish evil spirits themselves. For everyone else except you, there will be a note. I understand. Evil spirits do not disappear, and evil spirits tend to congregate in human settlements. Then, when evil spirits are driven out of lands where we have fulfilled our divine art channels and worshipped in temples, we will have nowhere to go. Aren't these evil spirits rushing into the Kingdom of Enland and the United Nations with unprecedented force? Ellen told me that expelling demons is like sweeping out a sandbox. If you lose the sand somewhere, you will only get a sand dune somewhere. That's a good insight. I have already grasped the signs. If the density of evil spirits increases too much, there is a concern that they will merge and materialize and a powerful evil spirit will appear. Another priest answered Thelma's question. I can't send scouts to England, but I could see from afar that the evil spirits were trying to haunt the land. As for what will happen to the land possessed by evil spirits, if we look back at the disaster in Nedil, we know it will lead to a terrible end. then we can't leave them alone. We have to help them. There may be religious conflicts, but if we don't put them aside and act, many lives will be lost. Falma appeals to the priests in the meeting hall, but one priest objects. However, if we send armed divine art users to save and exorcise this land, there will be an invasion and war will break out immediately. It is safe to wait here and see if you ask for help. If you come, it will be alright if you accept it. Then it will be too late. Send a messenger that the temple will cooperate with the exorcism of the Kingdom of Enland, and after the exorcism, request that it be placed in a divine base instead of the temple. After the exorcism, it will be so no stationing or interference in internal affairs. Are you sure? What is it? There is absolutely no advantage in sending troops. The Kingdom of Enland is a hostile nation to the temple, and there was also an act of provocation against His Holiness Pius. The High Priest has been replaced. Wash away the old evil feelings. If the Kingdom of Enland falls victim to evil spirits, the damage will spread to neighboring countries. Act before that happens. Holy Empress Elizabeth was a person of quick decision-making, just like when she was Empress. Falma, feeling that this decision alone was not enough, flew over Enland at midnight that day. The Kingdom of Enland consists of island states, and it seems that urban civilization has developed considerably. From Falma's point of view, it resembled the streets of northern England. Falma found a swirl of black fog that indicated the emergence of evil spirits in the great city. Just like then, the black fog covered the imperial capital of Saint-Fleuve. When the fog reaches a certain density or more, evil spirits begin to attack people. Extermination Sanctuary. Falma blew the condensed fog of evil spirits over the horizon, but he knew that this was only a temporary measure. It could last a few days at best. Plague Sanctuary is extremely effective, but it is similar to an insect repellent spray, and after the duration is up, it becomes less effective and the evil spirits gain the upper hand. To protect them, you'll eventually need to build the Guardian Temple or build a Divine Arts base and integrate it into the Divine Arts route. Thinking about it this way, I am surprised that the method of expanding the territory of temples to different parts of the world and building Guardian Temples in a planned way was extremely rational. It seems that the temple did not just blindly invade neighboring countries. The acceptance of temple theology and temple leadership was mutually beneficial to the people in the temple. It is possible to secretly establish a base for divine arts in a depopulated area of the Kingdom of Enland. But since evil spirits congregate in densely populated areas, it is meaningless unless it is placed in a city and kept secret from the people of the Kingdom of Enland. It will be destroyed. It will happen. Small enough to be inconspicuous, have little effect. I need their understanding. However, Falma thought that it would be better than doing nothing, and dug a small stake in the wall of the high bell tower used to place the divine art formation, and used the high difference of the tower to cover it with a minimal stack. I have exceeded the limits. It's an illegal invasion of a hostile country, but it can't be helped. While I was busy hardening the barrier, a boy who had apparently woken up in the bathroom opened the third-floor window and saw Falma dancing in the sky with a stick in his hand. Falma put his hand over his mouth and gestured him to be silent, and the boy nodded with a petrified face and closed the window. A few witnesses are inevitable, but too many are a nuisance. Falma decided to stop at a suitable place and flew away from the city. The islands of Enland are scattered, and it is impossible to build a barrier around the settlements on these islands. And even if we drive away the evil spirits of this land, where will the hordes of evil spirits driven out of this Kingdom of Enland go next? The evil spirits who have finally lost their place must leave for the new continent, the remaining human dwelling. Do they have what it takes to fight evil spirits? Isn't the final solution to evil spirits just the creation of the divine medicine, Millennium, a holy world? Lately, however, the creation of the divine medicine with the highest difficulty level feels like it is just a little bit more, but it continues to fail. And even when it tries, Falma's divine body has reached a level where it cannot continue. See, I am waiting for recovery. Falma descended into the Holy Land in a state of agony. This is to search for clues as to whether there is information about divine medicine or hidden treasures that can be used outside the Millennium Holy World. The low-ranking security priest who encountered Falma, who had returned from heaven to the roof of the great temple, bowed hastily and ran to call the superior. A high-ranking priest came with a wild rush to greet Falma. Please go home, medicine god. I haven't asked you about your return today, but do you have an urgent matter? Would you like me to call His Excellency Bruno de Medicis? I didn't come here today to train in the creation of divine medicine, so I don't need to call my father, he said. I'm very sorry about that. Bruno, who is also an expert in theological medicine, stayed in the Holy Land and got the priests to disclose the materials to continue researching and improving medicine. Now that all the forbidden books are freely available in the Holy Land, Bruno himself, who cannot use divine arts, was able to make an elixir with the help of the divine power of the priests. When I make a great discovery, I call Falma, so I want him to focus on his research. Instead, please call someone who knows about temple magic and evil spirits. As he took off his worldly clothes and put on his clothes for the Holy Land, a woman wearing a scholarly priest uniform and glasses came into Falma's room. I am Liara Venius, the librarian of the Great Temple Library, theologian. Come in, please come in. She stood just outside the living room and called her name, unable to look directly at Falma, so tense was she. Falma is the legitimate patron deity who has reappeared for the first time in hundreds of years, and it seems like a big deal to be nominated by this patron deity. No, here is fine. Liara lay on the floor outside Falma's living room, not moving. I have a consultation. Let's talk inside. Please. Falma once again advised her to enter the room, so after hesitation she took a seat. Order an araba. Even after Liara entered the room and sat down, her hands were still shaking. Falma was taken aback by the unexpected reaction. Since I entered the Holy Land, I have never been so afraid face to face. According to the knowledge of the theologians, is it really so frightening to come face to face with a being called a patron deity? As I thought, everything is predictable. On the contrary, I am eager to see what cruel things I will do to you. She gave up. The number of priests who have not died in service after meeting the patron deities is much lower. The causes of death are very different. There are those who lost their eyes because they looked directly at you. In fact, His Holiness Pius may have displeased you. He must have come here with the determination to die. Falma heaved a little sigh. I was unhappy with him, but his death was an accident. Besides, I have been living as a human in human society for 3 years. The people around me are still fine. My nobody went blind at the sight of him, and it's not about you now, it's about your knowledge. Is it true? I'm very sorry about that. Perhaps thinking that she could avoid harming her, Liara relaxed her stiff shoulders and looked up sheepishly at Falma's face. So, what do you want us to investigate? I am looking for a way to completely and permanently erase evil spirits from this world. I want to realize this so that the people of this world can live in peace without being threatened by evil spirits when I am gone. Is it really just a divine medicine? The research of divine medicines and elixirs was entrusted to Bruno. And since the forbidden books were also thoroughly researched, Falma took a different route and asked Liara about the historical background. Liara excused herself, left, and returned with a stack of books from the Forbidden Library. It was a cover that even Falma had never seen before. It was called Forbidden History Book Original. She accurately pulled out the books like a librarian and showed Falma the descriptions one by one. Since recorded history, there has been no guardian deity who has managed to completely eradicate evil spirits, she said. Does that mean then that the only way to survive for now is the divine medicine, Millennium Holy World? There is no way out, and it looks like we will return to where we started. Then, when Liara heard those words, she panicked. I didn't know that you would be challenged to make a divine medicine. So, are you going to hide from this world now? What's that? After 1,000 years of creating the holy world, I cannot even allow a single medicine god in this world. Apparently, the story of the creation of the divine medicine had not even been published within the Holy Land, so Liara had not heard from the temple headquarters what Falma was doing now. Bruno and the others probably didn't know about it, or maybe they knew about it and were letting it happen. Falma held her breath. In other words, if you create a divine medicine, will it disappear? It is not written in the Holy Scriptures, but I foolishly think that such an interpretation is possible if you decipher the ancient language. No wonder. My body collapsed during the operation. If I had finished it that way, would I really not have been able to come back? Falma felt a horror as if his body was freezing to the core. If you create a divine medicine, it will disappear, and even if you don't create it, it can disappear when time runs out. It was a dangerous place. Falma stroked his chest. When I think about what divine medicine, divine art, guardian deities, evil spirits and tomb guards are in this world, these concepts certainly have a religious face. Religion on earth has played a role in alleviating fear, guiding ethics, controlling desires, and maintaining community well-being. Falma understands that although there may be minor counter-arguments, religion is at least a story for people, made by people for people. However, the origin of religion in this world is quite different from that on earth. By successively summoning sacrifices from various worlds called tutelary deities, inciting threats to evil spirits, and bestowing divine arts upon them, people gather trust in the tutelary deities, transform their faith into divine power, and crush the tutelary deities with their gears. It transforms divine power into the driving force that sustains the world. There are biographies of each patron deity, and the temples worship them and use them as scriptures. But it was the gravekeepers themselves who made this religion take root in this world, and history was created for the sake of the will of people from other worlds by people. Is not. Therefore, in the mythology of this world there are many sophisticated traps. The concoctions of divine medicine are fascinating, and successive generations of medicine gods must have tried their hand at them. However, the compensation in the Forbidden Book was not fully described, and Falma almost fell into the trap. I thought it was time to prepare the divine medicine. It would be a pity if you said that now is the right time. Yes. Thank you for the useful information. Thanks to Mr. Liara, I was able to stay on my feet. There are still many things in this world that are unfinished. I can't just leave here and now. Thank you very much for today. When Falma urged Liara, Liara boldly spoke up. Can I borrow the wisdom of one of the medicine gods? When I read a book in the library, sometimes I have a cough that makes me think I'm going to die, and lately it's been especially bad. Shouldn't I? As Liara spoke quickly without taking a breath, Falma relaxed his expression. And then he had the face of an apothecary. It's like asthma caused by breathing in dust, mites, dead insects, etc. that get caught between books. Instead of reading books in the library, go to another well-cleaned room and read the books after paying well. Please, you may want to wear a mask in the library. I'll give you some medicine in case you have a seizure. I'll have someone bring you the medicine later. Thank you so much. I'm struggling right now so that one day I can just be an apothecary again and live peacefully in this world. Falma smiled lonely and stood up. 8 days after Natalie Blondel's glioblastoma brain surgery. Even after the drug wore off, she progressed well with no post-operative complications or infections, and the stitches were removed and she was finally discharged from the hospital. The university entered spring break after exams, and many of the students returned to their hometowns, but some of Natalie's university colleagues who lived in the Imperial City came to celebrate her discharge. Natalie, wearing an elegant wide-brimmed hat to hide her wounds, thanked Falma, Claude, the other staff members, and each of them to see her off before getting into the carriage. The crocuses on the window of her hospital room had already wilted, but the hospital staff congratulated her on her successful surgery and safe discharge from the hospital. Thank you for everything. It may be rude to say this, but I never thought I could leave the hospital alive. I'm glad I had faith in the doctors. Congratulations on your discharge from the hospital. Don't overexert yourself. Thelma and Claude called out to each other. Natalie nodded with a smile and handed them both a thank you note. I'm getting sluggish, so I'm thinking about taking a walk. Be sure to have someone with you. Since both the head chamberlain and the head pharmacist have been given leave, I will relax at the villa without bathing. The one who answered was her mother, court pharmacist Françoise. My relationship with my daughter, who was burdened by this serious illness, has improved and we are now finding our original parent-child relationship. Françoise also began to talk often when meeting Thelma at the court, at the university, and at the hospital where he was being treated. Please come back as soon as you find something wrong, he said. I'll stay in the area with the carriage about an hour away so that I can return immediately if there are any sudden changes. If that's the case, I'll be relieved. Natalie's illness also strengthened ties between surgeons, pharmacists and engineers, and many reforms took place within the university. When I come back from vacation, I will continue my cognitive rehabilitation. Yes, Professor. I will do my best to improve during spring break. Well then, with that, both Thelma and Claude felt relieved to see her beaming as she got into the carriage with Françoise. I'm glad it ended safely. It was a difficult situation, wasn't it? Ellen slaps Thelma on the shoulder and winks. However, Thelma is complicated. I want to do something about the tightrope walk every time. Why don't you get in the habit of enjoying your success even if it's just for a while? Even if you're happy, it's better to have a lot of fun. Exactly. You did it. Thelma and Ellen gave a high five, and Claude, who had apparently joined them, also gave a high five to the hospital staff. Thelma was also tossed up by the current, but some people were puzzled by Thelma's excessive agility. Professor de Medici's, it's so light I'm afraid there's nothing in it, he said. It looked like haze or clouds, but maybe I'm just imagining it. Somehow it hurts when you say that. Ellen returned to the pharmacy, and Thelma went to the university conference room. At the venue, Emmerich, Josephine, and experts in medicine and pharmacy gathered one by one. There are a number of topics that specialists in theological medicine brought together to work on in secret. But the top priority is the dissolution of the melting circle imposed by the Holy Emperor on behalf of the High Priest Pius. Then we hold the fourth research progress meeting on countermeasures against the melting circle. Emmerich, core member and research leader, uses a whiteboard to organize the current situation. Pal, who finished his home visit, also came. The situation is that Thelma and the others hear Emmerich's story about seats. Let's first organize the background so far. The people of this world, regardless of whether they are users of divine arts or citizens, have something in their genome related to the manifestation of divine power, which we have called the divine power gene cluster. Professor Thelma has already analyzed and confirmed the gene sequence. I wonder if the factor involved in divine power is not only in the genome, but also in mitochondrial DNA and other intracellular symbiotic organs. No, wait, latent infection with viruses and nucleic acids is also possible. Thelma and Pal immediately added to Emmerich's hypothesis. That's because when Thelma analyzed the entire genome and compared the genetic information of Earthlings and people of this world, no gene regions were found that appeared to have such a function. Even when comparing the genes of commoners and nobles, there were not that many genes that were likely expressed. However, since these expression control mechanisms may exist outside the genome, the possibility of overlooking them cannot be denied. The components and big picture of this divine-powered gene cluster have yet to be elucidated. Yes, including the ones you just added, these gene groups function normally in divine art users. By turning on the divine-powered gene cluster, it starts working. The divine art user activates the divine power gene group and calls in divine power, and will be able to use any divine art system. For example, I can control the surrounding atmospheric pressure, gas, by manipulating density and humidity. You can use wind magic. Emmerich creates wind with his fingertips. Falma had no answer as to what was the driving force behind the divine power. This mysterious system was given to carriers of a certain gene from the grave guardian, which is an existence of a higher dimension, but explained that the 4 attributes of the divine arts that exist in this world are all backward compatible with material creation and material deletion can be made. The water attribute controls water, the fire attribute controls fuels, the earth attribute controls mineral particles, and the wind attribute controls gases. Falma sees all attributes as equivalent according to scientific understanding and can treat them as such. But it is implied that users of divine art cannot use other attributes or other attributes. It is just that the gene group of divine power is controlled and this cannot be used. But genetically there is a basis that can use all attributes. Why, we can use only one attribute of divine arts. It is believed that once one attribute is determined, the gene clusters involved in other attributes are suppressed or their functions are destroyed. The basis for this is DNA methylation and histone modification in germ cells and somatic cells. Well, in other words, we have confirmed by experiments that modifications occur that are not accompanied by DNA mutations. At the germline stage, the divine characteristics of an individual are not determined. However, it appears to be regulated within the cell, so only one attribute can be used at the somatic level. On the other hand, it's reasonable to assume that the reason citizens can't use divine arts is because these gene clusters are defective or partially dysfunctional due to a control that doesn't involve gene mutation. Emmerich slowly looks around at everyone's faces, then he hangs the slides on the board and announces the results of the experiment. His cheeks were flushed, probably because he was excited to get a chance to present such a big accomplishment. To test this hypothesis, I cultured my cells, a user of divine arts, and used genetic engineering techniques to render the mythical genes non-functional. From that state, when function was reactivated, the cells began to radiate divine power. The results, which Emmerich presented to the audience one by one, shocked the other participants except Falma. Incidentally, Falma was his supervisor and, of course, knew about the progress of the research. In addition, Charlotte Sorrell, a relative of mine who is currently a citizen, has already been subjected to a complete genome analysis by Professor Falma and has a defect in one of the divine-powered gene clusters. So she has since produced divine power generation of the father. I cannot. When I repaired the genetic mutation in this cultured cell, I managed to produce divine power again. In addition, for those who are citizens going back several generations, many gene mutations and loss of function. This is the first report in the world. What? This is a big deal. The meeting hall was full of commotion. The report had an effect that turned the common sense of divine arts upside down until then. It could be said that this was the greatest discovery that Emmerich and Josephine had painstakingly found. While Falma entrusted Emmerich with the research and valued his independence, he never failed to advise Emmerich at length, and he grew from a novice to a researcher on the verge of independence in a very short time. Now we are trying to unravel the mythical world with the language of science. Think for yourself what is going on in your body. Every person has to start thinking scientifically to understand the phenomenon of divine art. Now Emmerich can think for himself and prove it himself. Equipment and methods need Falma's support, but in any case he is making great progress as an independent researcher. Sacred crests that rarely appear in users of special divine arts. Sacred curse crests once used by cardinal priests, the melting circle of Her Holiness Elizabeth, and even curses received as compensation for forbidden arts are controlled by this group of genes. By clarifying these genes' interactions, we may be able to comprehend the divine arts system. Emmerich folds. The chamber has not been able to keep up with this paradigm shift and has been faltering for some time. In fact, it might be possible for a commoner to become a noble, acquire several divine art attributes, and even increase the level of divine power attainable. Haven't you known too much? If you do, you will receive the wrath of the patron god. Some were concerned about exposure to mythological genes for religious reasons. My patron deity is a medicine deity. Emmerich cleared his throat and answered reluctantly. Emmerich tried to look at Falma, but Falma averted his gaze. Emmerich, who had the latter removed, kept his remarks safe. I am proud of the support I have received from the medicine god, at least given the current amazing progress. In any case, I am convinced that this discovery will be useful for a more systematic understanding of the divine arts. Here I am. The scholars were busy taking notes, and Pal showed great interest in Emmerich's data, skipping over some pointed questions. Thank you, Emmerich Bauer, for your wonderful lecture, he said. I am honored to receive your praise, Professor. As for the plenary session, based on Mr. Bauer's findings, the next objective is to control the melting circle. It is believed that His Holiness Divine Power Group has a unique mechanism that can express the fusion circle. The first strategy is to remove little by little the fusion circle of His Holiness. While Falma continued with the meeting after Emmerich, Pal suddenly stood up. Let me just say one word. Just to confirm, the fusion circle manifests only in magic users, right? That's right. The fusion circle is induced alongside those who have the expression pattern of the divine-powered gene cluster suitable for those nearby. The cultured cells produce divine power, right? That's right. Pal spoke and Falma answered. When Pal heard this answer, he turned to Emmerich with a grin. Emmerich peasant. Yes, Pal de Medici. Do you have any questions? Are the cultured cells of His Holiness ready? Yes, already. Hearing Emmerich's words, Pal's face contorted as if he couldn't help but want to give an answer. I am upset. Are you upset? Falma and Emmerich looked at each other, but Emmerich tilted his head and Falma gasped as she noticed something. Then it's your ad demonstrandum already shown. Emmerich had already demonstrated a way to free Elizabeth from the fusion circle without harming her. Your Highness, I have something to tell you. Falma, who had entered the courtyard, called out to Elizabeth, accompanied by Claude and Josephine. I wanted to bring Emmerich and Pal, who were making contributions, but I could not bring them because they were not courtiers. The Holy Emperor had priests and ministers of state accompany him and was single-mindedly involved in government affairs. What, you've changed so much? I made a hypothesis to neutralize the melting circle of His Holiness, he said. What? Elizabeth tilts her head at the sudden development. Shut down the sacred veins temporarily. Falma persuades Elizabeth, the priest, and the minister of state to seek her approval. Well then, excuse me. I placed my fingertips on her back and temporarily blocked the nerve veins from behind. Then the fusion circle that had a strong presence on Elizabeth's back disappeared and was transferred to the surface of her cultured cells that Falma had brought. Falma nodded as if he had done it, and Josephine and Claude made surprised expressions because their hypothesis was correct. What do you mean by that? Has the comb on your back disappeared? Elizabeth was dazed as she looked at the mirror the maid was holding. Falma explained to the confused girl. I will explain why I was able to do this. As a premise, this fusion circle can only exist in the cells of a divine art user. The fusion circle recognizes that the host has died and activates the genes of the cells of those best suited to become high priests and create a new fusion circle. Falma spoke while showing a schematic diagram to explain. Previously, we had mass-cultured the cells we received from His Holiness, so we induced their expression. I showed Elizabeth a large petri dish of cultured cells that Josephine had finished copying. If cultivation continues stably, there will be no problem in opening the divine veins of His Holiness. I have poured in my divine power to maintain the divine circulation. Even if a total eclipse of the sun comes, the cultivated cells will melt and the new cells will emerge. No one will die. The curse of the hammer's gears is broken. What? Elizabeth's bright red eyes opened like shining rubies. His face was incredulous. I have no idea. No, it's the knowledge and hard work of so many people that the solution has literally appeared. Either way, it's beautiful. With the results of Emmerich's experiments and the complex chemical reactions of Josephine and Pal's ideas, it was a tumultuous solution that could be called a triumph of collective intelligence. Thelma explained to Elizabeth the story behind the idea and the people involved in it. Is that so? Let's have a celebration and reward all those who did a good job. Now I can focus on government affairs and celebrations without being distracted by distractions. Elizabeth stretched out just as if the possession had fallen. Thelma slowly stroked her back and injected her with divine power, unleashing her curse. Emmerich and Josephine were awarded new territories based on a meritorious appointment. And medals and awards were given to all who had participated in this research and made meritorious contributions. Emmerich, who had made particularly great contributions, also received the county of the Empire of Saint-Fleuve. Emmerich, who was a poor aristocrat of the Kingdom of Spain, felt humbled when he received a personal letter from the Holy Emperor that arrived at the Saint-Fleuve Imperial College of Medicine. I feel that you are too considerate. I come from the Kingdom of the Spine and I am still in my student status. Moreover, in return, I have not done my research. I think that what you have done has been evaluated correctly. It's amazing to be awarded. It's amazing not to be hereditary. Thelma and Ellen praised Emmerich generously. Emmerich scratched his head in embarrassment. Then I will be grateful to you for accepting it. It will make life easier for my brothers and sisters. Take a break from the lab for a while and enjoy your spring break. I will. Emmerich grinned and showed his teeth. No matter what, don't give up and solve one at a time. Every day is a series of disasters, but it never drags on. I was lonely when I came into this world, but I am no longer alone. There are countless people who support and rely on them. Thelma thought about such things as he touched the Yakutian crest on his shoulder, which was still shrouded in many mysteries, and clutched it tightly.